Jesse Lonergan is another, as I like to call, holistic cartoonist, utilizing every nook and cranny of the medium to tell a story with pacing, layouts, and even the gutters. He's just as at home telling a dramatic human story as he is drawing cute and bizarre animals. I really learned a lot from our conversation, and I think you will too. You can find his work in books like Planet Paradise, Faster, Hedra, Arca, and more. But today we're going to dive into his latest issue of his latest release with writer Pornsak Pichetshote, Man's Best, Issue 2. Welcome to Chris Anderson Comics. Um, so Man's Best, man. Uh this book is wild.
Yeah.
um your stuff is always fascinating, and I feel like you take a different thoughtful approach to every single project that you do, and push the language and do different things with it. Whether it be Hedra, how do you say it?
I say Hedra, but I
Okay,
was a
well,
jerk,
you mean you
and
wrote it, so
I yeah, but I intentionally chose a name that that wouldn't people wouldn't know what it was, um,
good.
because it's like this big wordless comic. It's like 56 pages of
Yeah.
wordlessness, and I just felt like to give it a recognizable title like Space or like it just like crushes it. It's like no, the whole beauty of it is that it stands by itself, and so I didn't want to give a recognizable word name to it.
Yeah.
And then also I wanted the title to fit within the grid, so either 5 letters or 7 letters. Um, and then with the sort of geometry starts playing a part in it, and the space gods are met, and they're sort of represented by the platonic solids, which are polyhedra.
Hmm.
um, and so I just sort of dropped the poly and just had it be like hedra. So
See, this is
yeah.
what I mean when I talk about people, you being like holistic cartoonists. You
I mean,
know,
I mean, I
you
went
think
around the
about it
bed on
right down
hedra.
to,
I kind of
oh,
lost my mind for a bit, getting quite
and we
obsessed with
benefit
stuff.
from it,
Yeah.
from your lunacy.
But yeah, so when people, and then for me personally, I feel like there is this comic book thing, and people have heard me say this before, of not knowing how to pronounce things,
Yeah.
like especially like creator names. Like I think now with the internet, we're like, all right, it's Sienkiewicz, but like
Yeah.
definitely
Well,
did not hear it that way the first time. It was like Sinkowitz,
oh
Sienkiewicz,
yeah,
like
totally.
all this confusion, Liefeld, Liefeld.
I
I
heard
still don't know how
Pornsak
to
say
say.
his last name 75 times when I was doing a signing with him, and I still don't remember. Pinchashake, I think.
Pitch a show. Uh,
Yeah, Pichetshote. That's it.
I'm still probably pronouncing it wrong because it's Thai, and
Probably.
the accent is very. I'm sure I'm doing like my ugly American take
Yeah.
on it. Yeah, like Buscema,
Yeah.
Buscema, like
Bushima?
uh,
Bushema? Bushemi?
Buscema,
No, wait.
Buscema.
I think it's Bushema, yeah.
Yeah, and so I kind of like felt like that's part of the thing. I kind of like it as a thing because I feel like
Absolutely.
at once it's there's a narrative and a story, but it's also sort of about comics at the same time. Uh,
Yeah.
so
You really pushed it with that one for sure. And then you just
yeah,
continued with like Planet Paradise and Arca, with this um your use of your panel layouts
mhm,
and space between them, and
yeah,
geometry, and like leading one thing to the other. It's like, like, um, I can't think of too many cartoonists that do anything like that at all. And obviously, like Chris Ware will come to mind when it comes to things like that. But like, I can't handle a Chris Ware comic, this because it's just too much going
I
on
mean,
for me to even like and plus I'm 46 years old. My eyes don't work that well. I can't see like little tiny things like that. But
I,
you've got it boiled down to like a science.
I love Chris Ware, and like he's I feel like a huge influence on me, and I also feel like a huge influence on all independent comics, like post 2000. Like I feel
Yeah.
like you there was Dan Klaus before, and then all of a sudden his pages start getting denser. There's more things going on. The coloring changes, like all those things. I feel are this like this Chris Ware influence, not necessarily like direct, but like
Right.
everyone started to like look at things differently, and you
Yeah.
know, and I feel there was like this sort of like dense page thing going on, like Ivan Brunetti, um, and stuff around like the late '90s, early
Hmm.
2000s. I feel like with Chris Ware, like it also depends on like the era. I
Yeah,
feel like
that's
the
true.
earlier stuff is a bit more fun,
Hmm.
and like engaging, and so like you get this page that is a little bit of a puzzle, and it's sort of like you sort of take it apart or figure your way through the puzzle, and there's like a joke and maybe a sad joke, and then I feel like he starts moving like very serious, and it's like I don't. Sometimes I love his stuff, but sometimes I'm like I don't know if I want to solve this puzzle
Yeah.
because what I feel like I'm going to get at the end of it is just bummed out.
Yeah.
And I think there's something sort of in a in like an outside of the comic sort of aspect of that, of like that there is this person putting all this care into this mundane stuff, and these pains, and that care is like love. It's a sort of
Yeah.
this love, and like a feeling of like I'm there with you too. But sometimes you're 45. It's like I got a 2-year-old. I'm tired. I'm cranky, and like I just want something a little more fun. Like
Yeah.
I don't. So um, and I
You
think
don't want
my
to follow his labyrinth and into the descent into madness and sorrow.
well, yeah, I feel my sensibilities lean a bit poppier than he
Yeah.
does. I kind of think of myself, um, as sort of like very not American and American. It's
Hmm.
like I like these like French comics and Japanese comics, and I like French New Wave cinema, and I big krautrock fan. But I was also raised on junk food, and
Right.
and it's like I feel like my comics are this sort of like getting like heady and weird and math based, but also like kind of keeping it kind of grounded in this like kid who grew up watching Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's also like a Euro sensibility to your line too, I think, you know, in
yeah.
there.
I feel like yeah, it's sort of I feel the U.S. mode. I feel it's changing always, but like
Oh
was
yeah.
like there's that Jim Lee mode for a long time of just these perfectly clean lines, like
Hmm.
like so crisp and like so like to me unattainable, and I knew it. Like I'm just gonna lean on my wonky, idiosyncratic, stumbling but not quite falling down line.
Yeah. Well, luckily we had people like Paul Pope and, brushy
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
along the way to, give us a hand with being acceptable. Cause I'm
yeah,
definitely a wonky brush guy. I don't know about
yeah.
you, but like I I lay things out, perspective and stuff like that. Not always with a ruler, but sometimes I'll rule it
Mhm.
out to get it perfect. And then when I go and actually draw it, I throw that ruler away and it's just the brush.
Yeah. I use a lot of rulers and pencils, um,
Hmm.
and occasionally perspective. It sort of depends on what I'm drawing, like where it like um, I think an issue too, which we're going to be looking at, or
Yeah.
like these hallways or whatever, where it's
Yeah.
like this sort of mechanical sort of space. It feels like having that like figured out in this kind of stuff. It feels like actually measuring it out matters.
Yes.
But
No,
then
it does. Yeah.
once I ink, I do it by hand,
Right. And that
and
gives it
I
more
feel
life, I feel like.
yeah, it's that human quality,
Mhm.
and sort of like I feel I feel like that quest for perfection is actually like kind of off-putting. Like I feel like people people respond. I mean, there are plenty of people who don't like my work, so it doesn't necessarily true. But like for me at least, I respond to the feeling of knowing it's human and like
Yeah.
that really crisp, clean stuff. For me, it's a little off-putting. And it's like for me, it's sort of the same with like I don't know movies where it's like,
Hmm.
oh, this was really put together for the special effects. It's very controlled and stuff, as opposed to oh, that was an ad lib,
Yeah.
or music like really overproduced pop music versus something like Pavement,
Yeah.
where
I'm in the same
there's
boat
just
with you there.
the yeah, like the same sort of like feeling.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. For me, first of all, like perfection isn't anything that's attainable by anybody ever. It's not even possible. But if there was something close to it for me, it would be just like this perfect balance between what the pen or brush wants to do,
Right.
and the person having a slight amount of control over it. That's where perfection lies for me. I wanted
Yeah.
to take a look at this ash can. I have the first issue over here, but I just wanted to take a look at the ash can because I wanted to take a look at your designs in your sketchbook. I always love to see like the pencil underline and how you were laying down screen tones and stuff on here.
Uh-huh.
You started doing this sort of like cartoony, hollow-eyed, thing that you
Yeah.
got into. I think you probably just started doing it for fun and on like commissions and things.
Yeah.
Is that where it sort of
Yeah, it just
spawned from?
came out of sketchbooks, and, like, I think it came out of, like, drawing, like, a lot of robots, and, like, robots sort
Hmm.
of, having, like, this sunken eyes often,
Yeah.
and then sort of I feel like it sort of moved into, like, this weird, I kinda like when comics start or art in general starts getting its own sort of rules, and so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't make any sense for a squirrel to have inset eyes, but it's like, well, that's the way this universe works, um, and I feel like with Man's Best, it's like 50-50. Like the cat and the dogs are kinda drawn sort of normally, but then we have this robotic stuff that's not quite functional, like,
Oh, no,
you know
but they
I mean,
look
no, putting
great.
a rocket pack on a French bulldog is a horrible idea.
Yeah,
But
like a literal rocket.
yeah, yeah. Well, like, yeah, I guess I feel that's like my junk food coming out is like,
I love it.
no, I don't wanna figure out how to make it look like it would work. Like, it's
No,
almost
you don't
like
have
it's
to.
much more fun if it's just like, no, you look at it and you know exactly what you're looking at.
Throw all the
Um,
science out. Let's just have fun
yeah.
with it. Yeah. Oh yeah, man. So the designs are just fantastic, and I love how you had this sensibility that you just brought into this project too. Like
Yeah,
these
and
these
I
kind
think
of
actually,
things.
like, Eric Harburn, the editor, reached out to me about doing it, and I think it was, like, he'd seen sort of me posting, like, this sort of stuff, like this robot here on,
Hmm.
like, Instagram, but not like it hadn't sort of gotten into my comics, and he felt like this was, like, a good comic for me to sort of get to do that sort of stuff, um, and so, yeah, we have
Well,
these 2 versions of robots that appear in the first issue, and it's like
yeah,
one is the fun, charming, 1960s anime robot, and then, the grim, sinister,
yeah.
amorphous being.
Dark Tower thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, he was absolutely right to bring you on for this to showcase that stuff. It's just
yeah,
perfectly like weird for the project, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um yeah, so let's take a look through issue 2. It's hard to give away the story because the story's not over. Issue 2 is only out right now, so people
Yeah.
can still, go to their comic shop and ask for the first two and be able to get caught up. How many issues is it going to be?
It's gonna be 5.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Um, and right away on the cover, you're gridding it.
Yeah, the sort of I actually asked if I could do that. I was like, "Can I just, like, grid out the cover?"
Hmm.
And just have, like, so, like, this grid sort of on the cover is basically the grid that's sort of used throughout, um, where I just didn't do the top 3, panels of the grid.
Hmm.
So it's sort of like a 15 panel grid. And I just asked them, I was like, "Can I just, like, leave those blank and, Jeff will design a logo and fill that space?" Um, 'Cause I don't know, I guess just for me, a lot of times, like, even when I'm doing variant cover works, I'm like, "Can I see the logo?" Like, "Can you give me the logo?" Like, I'd like to draw it on if possible
Yeah.
because it's, like, weird to,
Right.
leave the space, and so, like, I I asked if I could do this sort of thing, and then with they what they did, which is a sort of a cool suggestion, is like, "Oh, can you do a variant as well where it's sort of like the same part of it is the same image, but, like, then break it apart?" And so, like, this is the main cover for issue 2, and then there's another variant by me, which has, like, the animals in the exact same position and, like, exact same pose, but they're standing in, like, the middle of this pink field, with all these, like, little monsters coming at them and stuff, and sort of, like,
Oh, neat.
playing with, like, different versions of the same scene, on the cover.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool suggestion, that, I got it from Eric. I don't know if it was his idea, um, but, he was
Yeah,
the
that's a
person
great.
who
That's,
talked to
that's
me.
a great idea. I mean, it's contextually, it makes sense too.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, to give people kind of the gist of the story, it's about these, three pets that are sort of on this ship and trained in a simulation, to wear these suits and work together to fight these sort of giant robot things. They've only
Yeah,
been doing it in a simulation, but now the ship has crashed and these things are actually coming after them.
yeah, and they've lost their humans, so they're
Right. They're
they're
trying to find them.
trying to find them. Um, yeah.
Man, this is a great opening page. Just this thing coming at you
Yeah,
with them
I feel
running.
good about that one. Like,
Yeah, man, I'd be proud. And it's nice and dirty, like
yeah,
the
yeah,
line work is not, it feels like not your usual line work in here.
yeah,
I feel like
it's
and it
a
could be the coloring too, I'm not sure, but it feels like real dirty and like it should be.
yeah. Well, yeah, like, part of the idea was sort of, um, one juxtapositioning with, like, in the first sequence in the first issue, there's, like, this, you know, fake robot situation, and it's, like, nice and
Right.
clean and pretty, and then it's like we get in this sort of, like, dirty, messy robot sequence,
Yeah.
at the end of last issue and then continuing in this one. Um,
You
y yeah, sort of pushing, like, the semi-curvilinear perspective, like, really,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
trying to get these animals small and these monsters kind of monstrous robots sort of big and terrifying.
Yeah, you do a great job of it too because you curve it the further things go into the horizon, the more you curve it,
Yeah.
almost as opposed to I mean, I guess that's how it would work, wouldn't it? Because then the big curve would curve again down. Well,
Yeah, it would
nobody
continue
can see where I'm
curving.
pointing.
Yeah.
All the way down here, it'd be curving. Yeah. Oh man, it's just beautiful. That's a beautiful one. And I love how you did the panels to do almost like an establishing shot,
Right, yeah.
just as panels at the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah, and also part of it was, like, to kinda really get that, like, that robot to pop,
Hmm.
that they are bigger than the panel. I felt if it could have just been left open and just done as
Yeah.
a standard splash page, but I feel like putting that little not even like a dense grid, but just like a little bit of a grid, like he sort of pops forward, um, just has like a different effect. Like using the panel sort of to like at once sort of neaten it. Like I feel like it would be a bit messier if it were just a splash page, um, and this sort of makes it very like clear what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's really smart. I don't think I would have ever thought to do that. Really, really smart. Um, you use just like a do you use like a Pentel brush for your
Yeah, I use a Pentel Fude brush pen. Um, sort of
Oh,
the it's like the cheapest real brush pen you can get, but it's got a big reservoir in it. I got someone back at my desk,
yeah.
um,
I thought I
and
had one here.
I refill it with a carbon platinum black ink or platinum carbon ink. I forget the name.
Is it like one of
Um,
these?
no, I can go grab
Oh,
one.
you don't need to.
Um, it's there's one I can see it. I'm gonna be right back.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so it's this one,
Oh,
uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
and like
They're like these,
basically,
but right.
yeah, like that's the bold, I think, and this is just the medium or whatever. And generally, I use it as much as I can, like
Yeah.
as much as possible. So like as fine as I can get it,
Yeah.
and
Just
I guess what,
finessing the tip of it, like
yeah, yeah, like
yeah.
so like I feel like I went through like periods of using like different brushes or different tools for different
Mhm.
things. But then I always would feel like there was like this struggle to balance the line weights of
Man,
like
you're speaking my language right
yeah,
now.
like
The page
like
on
if
here right now.
yeah, yeah, like if you're using like a Tombow brush pen, one of the fine
Yeah.
ones, like it
Mhm.
has a beautiful line and a beautiful line quality, but then if you like put this in next to it, it's like, oh, these are like
They can
this is
clash.
like a baseball bat, and that's like an
Yeah.
X-Acto knife, or
Yeah.
you know, and so I find like I had to go through trying to use all sorts of different tools and then just be like, no, I'm just going to use one as much as possible. And
Yeah.
then that sort of balances everything, like it gets the line weights sort of equal throughout. And this pen can like get a pretty thick line, like a
Oh,
pretty heavy
yeah.
line, but it can get a pretty thin one too. And
Yeah.
just sort of like instead of like trying to blend these tools, just having like one tool. And then if I get really fine, which would generally be like a face or
Yeah.
eyeball, like the dots of eyes, I'll use like a Micron O1. Um, like
Okay.
the very,
Sure.
so like that top panel on like either of the top panels, like the eyes probably, like I did like the
Like in
dots
here,
of the
yeah.
eyes, like I would do with like an O1 or something. But
Okay.
otherwise,
Yeah,
I
and
just
in
try to
here,
use the brush
right.
pen as much as
Yeah, that makes
possible.
sense. Yeah, I think that I'm sort of on the same page with you with that. I break out the those pens to do small faces too, because otherwise you're just gonna get this little blob and it's not gonna work and it's gonna have like
Yeah,
Kirby eyes going like this, and
yeah, yeah. It's very hard to do a fine dot with a brush pen. Like
yeah,
you can do a fine line, but a dot is pretty difficult. Uh,
yeah. Um, man, this page is like
yeah,
got like 14 panels on it of
yeah.
just like
Keep
action,
counting.
go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I put a lot of panels on a page. I guess I
Well,
just
it
sort
makes
of
sense here
feel,
because there's a lot of action too. It should feel chaotic.
yeah, like I feel
Hang
the
on a second, you froze up. Hang on. How do you feel?
to some extent, I feel like it doesn't matter like
Oh,
what's in a panel sometimes. It's
yeah,
about like the density and the noise. And so like one panel just feels like a moment in time, while six panels feels like six moments in time. And so it's
yeah,
like it creates this sort of effect. And with this, it's supposed to be like chaotic and noisy. And so personally, like in that sort of those tiny tight panels, that the six tight panels. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how clear is it? I don't know if it really matters that much. You know, and it's about like the noise of it and sort
Yeah.
of like, you know, what does the sequence matter that much? I don't really know that it does. It's creating this sense of chaos and action. And you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I try and be as clear as possible in my drawings, but like part of it is just about like yeah the volume. Um,
Yeah. They work individually as being clear storytelling, and they work
yeah,
together as being chaos, and that's exactly what you're going for. So it
yeah,
worked really well. And what actually adds to it too is being sort of sandwiched in between these blasts of these little robots, that
right, yeah,
really like are like spaghetti, coming at, and
yeah,
like lines of spaghetti coming at you with these robots, you
yeah,
know. And all
yeah,
of it together leads up to this like large panel of him shouting, which pays off,
yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Great page, man. I like how you're experimenting with color for this too.
Yeah, yeah. Um, this was sort of a challenge with
Yeah.
color. Like, it felt like it sort of felt because it's also like we're traveling to like different worlds and stuff. Like,
Hmm.
okay, this is how I'm going to do it now. Later, I'm not going to be able to do it this way because I'll there'll be a different rule for that world, um,
Right.
and sort of like yeah, like trying to figure out that balance. And also like it comes up sort of more later, but like leaving things to be done in color, which I don't know that I'd really done that much of in the past. Like I sort of like this sort of lava pit sort of thing. Like it's just that's just all white on the page,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's sort of trusting that color will hold it together, which I just sort of think is something that with being the colorist I'm allowed to do, like where it's and I don't mean like to say that I would distrust a colorist. It's almost like I wouldn't feel comfortable giving them that work of being
Right.
like giving them a page and being like, "Could you make this work?" I kind of left it unfinished, but because it's myself and I know what I'm going to do, I'm like, I'm going to leave it unfinished, and I'll fix it in coloring or I'll finish it in coloring. Um,
I
I just
understand
don't
that.
think I would be comfortable doing that. Like if I had a good relationship with a colorist or something, um, maybe, but
Right. You also, I noticed that you established that like every page is going to have a panel or two that's going to go all the way and bleed to the edge. Do you do that?
yeah,
Do you do that in
um,
all of your books, or did you make that as a choice for this one?
it's more consciously a choice in this one. So
Hmm.
sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Hmm.
Um, with this, it was sort of looking at a lot of like manga and thinking about like using that idea of like um, like ways that you can affect a feeling or give a sort of sense of something. And so, like by on the top here going like full bleed, it's
Yeah.
bigger, it's more dramatic.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
cinematic.
then
Right.
and then on these other panels, it's like it's contained. It's sort of the small story. So, um, kind of trying to use all the elements. Like in this section, it also like it switches to a black background, sort of because they've gone into this cavernous sort of underworld.
Oh, you mean
Um,
the gutters?
yeah, the gutters were white like a
Oh,
page
yeah.
ago, and then like
Yep. I
and
see
then
right
like
there.
as soon as they sort of enter into this space, um, it goes it goes black. Um,
Man, I don't know if you intended this for this or not, but the fact that they're kind of looking this way and it's
mhm.
leading the eye this way, and then you have to come back this way, and you're still following this sort of river of lava. it almost
Mhm.
gives it this moving effect, just the way that your eye wants to follow.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know how intentional that was, how conscious that was.
It
I
was
I I
super
see it,
intentional, and
yeah,
you're a genius. Yeah.
sometimes you get lucky,
Yeah.
and things work out. Uh,
Do you think about the flow of the eye a lot when you lay out your panels?
oh,
I mean, you
yeah.
must when
Like,
you're in your grittier stuff,
yeah,
you
it's
have
it's
to.
like, yeah, I sort of, like, think
Yeah, I can
about,
see like the arm
especially
coming
the
down.
dialogue, like,
Mhm.
where it's going to go and, like, can it go in that order and stuff,
Right.
and so, like, you know, I feel that there's sometimes, like, no, Pornsak didn't write any pages with more than, like, 5 panels, and so anytime you see it that dense, it's because I've chosen to break it up, and I'm definitely thinking about, like, how it will read, um, next to various things.
Right.
Um,
I was gonna ask that too. So, like, when he gives you a page, it sort
mhm.
of it's like a traditional script.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, I think there's some sequences where he might have not written any panels, and just been
Mhm.
like, like that big fight sequence, he might have just written, like, the dialogue,
Mhm.
and let me go. Um, yeah, I when I first started working with writers, I really worried about adding panels, um,
Yeah.
but I've been told, um, that they don't care if you add panels. They only care if you remove panels, and so I never do that. Like,
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
my issue. I also sort of will do like a test at the beginning, and sort of the first page of you can see it in the ash can. The first page of the ash can I think has like 13 panels in it, and I think it was written as like two. But it was just sort of like, I'll send this in and see if anyone gets upset. Um, and nobody did. And like,
Good.
I think I think I'm in uh, a somewhat lucky position that, like, people came to know who I was because of Hedra, and so, like, they kind of want that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like, if I just handed in, like, your classic 6 panel grid, I feel they'd be annoyed with me or something.
Right.
Like, this isn't why we asked you to be here. Um,
Right. Yeah. If you went one to one off the script.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
and
the
and,
same
and
way. I'll add beats and things like that, as long as it
mhm.
feels like the story it helps the story flow better. But I will combine things sometimes too if it feels like it's doesn't need to be two. Maybe
Yeah,
that's not good.
I don't know. I think it's as long as it works, and, like,
Yeah.
I feel, you know, the breaking it up, I don't know. It's sometimes it's just sort of like it's easier to draw, like, 2 things, like, than it is to draw 2 things in 1 panel. Like,
Yeah.
you can just sort of split it up and, like at the bottom of that, I don't remember how it was written, but, like, either the last 2 panels of either of the pages, like, if I drew that as 1 panel, which I think either one could be, like,
Yeah.
everything's gonna be smaller, like, their faces are gonna be smaller, their relationship to each other is gonna become an issue of, like, how close are they? How close were they before? And so by splitting it up, I get to draw their faces bigger so their emotions are clearer, um, and you get more of a sense of it. And so I just find it easier to do too. Like,
Totally.
you know, uh,
Yeah, and it's not as redundant if you do it the same way. And also, I love how it's sort of, um, you know, two heads and then one head, two heads,
yeah,
one head. It's musical. It's like,
yeah. And I
you
think
know,
as long as you're like sort of establishing the space somewhere, like you can like people worry, I think, about talking heads and stuff. Um,
yeah,
but like I'm doing full figure stuff. I'm there's like 2 panels on that second page that are just where stuff is. Like
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
atmosphere. Um,
I mean, look at that panel. You can feel the
yeah,
ecstasy in that dog's face. Just,
yeah,
like,
yeah, this vibration.
um, so this is really cool. This is sort of like the overseeing, mainframe god of all these
Yeah,
robots that they've come across. This is a
right.
really
Yeah,
cool design. And
yeah,
feels very Inkall, and Inkall
um,
meets Lord of the Rings, the
yeah, yeah.
Sauron.
Yeah, it's always sort of like this weird thing of like I feel like there's this like purity of simple shapes,
Yes.
and then it feels like you didn't do anything. It's just circles. But it's like
Yeah.
yeah, but it has, and I think within the context of this, of like there's all this grit and noise, and to have this sort of like very light, delicate line, sort of clean image, uh, is a good
Yeah.
juxtaposition.
Anytime I have a triangle in my things, I say, "This one's for you, Tony McMillan."
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and it's with all the in the middle of all the chaos and the line, the
yeah.
line work, to have this clean thing is something, for the eye to rest on and stuff. This is great. This wall of looks like, they're speakers or something, and it pops up.
Yeah.
What a great design.
Yeah, it was yeah, like Pornsak wrote this thing, it's like, yeah, and all of a sudden it turns into like all these little robots, and it's it's one of those things where like, okay, that's gonna be a challenge to have it not be robots, and then suddenly be, um, and so like how to create that effect of like the sudden reveal. Um,
Right. It's almost like, a front line of a like warriors shields,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
that's sort of the phalanx. Is it phalanx? Is that what it is?
yeah.
Um, yeah, suddenly they pop out.
This panel in particular really got me with the way that you use the action and the line and then the color
Yeah,
to make it really pop out. And then also you did almost this like 3D effect where you moved the color, like you must have done a color hold on this and moved things over to the side
yeah,
to
I don't
give
actually
it
know
this
how to do
vibration.
anything, but,
None of us do. We just screw
um,
around until it works.
but
Then you
I
but
was
you got to do it
actually
twice.
yeah,
you
I
know.
was looking at this, like, the original of this, and so, like, those, like, heavy black sort of whip things, those
Mhm.
lines are on a totally separate sheet of paper, like,
Oh, they are.
yeah, so like, light boarded it because I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do some weird effect on it." And so and also, like, I wanted to get that,
Interesting.
like, that thick, fat, sort of, like, out of control line,
Mhm.
of it, but also be able to have, like, this crackle around it and stuff, and so it was done on a separate sheet of paper, and then I, like, put it together, and then, like, yeah, the color holds with that separate line, to get sort of with me, it would probably be CMY, color movement, to sort of get this like vicious effect going on.
It's this rusty dark stuff juxtaposed with this pastel. It's also like just
Yeah,
a beautiful effect in this book too.
yeah. I've realized in colors, I lean very much towards pastel,
Yeah.
in general. But yeah,
It's
yeah,
pleasing.
yeah. And now they suddenly find themselves in a new environment, and like with this was a lot of like color figuring. So like
Yeah.
the ink color changes on that bottom panel.
I see
Um,
that.
like
Yeah.
it goes from like this sort of dark brown to a dark purple, and then like really sort of like very pastel, but also pretty saturated color. Um,
Yeah, to give it almost like
they
this
enter this.
children's book effect or something.
Yeah. Um,
And then as we orient ourselves here, this is you at your finest, man. The way you do
yeah.
these panels just blows my mind. I just love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That one was fun. Like sort of thinking about like how to change this reality. Um, because it's sort of like the physics of what this world is that they're in sort of remains in question for quite a long time, and so like it feels like a good excuse to sort of be able to do these sorts of things.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then yeah, using the clouds to show the turn. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, and just the way that you break these panels,
yeah,
it's very effective. And then you get to introduce these cute little munchkin guys.
yeah, um, the tinies. Um, Again, a very simple sort of design. It's
Yeah,
like the challenge of cuteness is, I feel like detail's not cute. Um, like Hello Kitty is kind of like peak cuteness, and it's just like it's so
right.
simple. Like, and the
Yep.
more detail you add, and these guys are supposed to be very cute, so very very simple design. Uh,
Yeah.
but those sunken eyes again.
This is interesting how you kind of did the background and then did this thicker background around it with like the sort of
The
shock
yeah
speed lines.
yeah it's yeah, I guess my take on that Alfred Hitchcock Vertigo effect
Yeah.
of, like, zooming in and pulling back at the same time.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know that I've ever seen that
mm,
before. It's really effective.
yeah, and yeah, sort of, like, using it to give this that this is a very shocking moment, um, you know, for him to
To
hear that
hear that
he's
he's
a
a
bad
bad
dog,
boy, yeah.
that
Yeah.
she's a bad dog, yeah,
Right. A bad dog, right. Yeah.
that's the worst thing you can hear.
Right. Yeah, and then you've gotta go, like, full on it's almost like those things from the Max, but cute versions of them.
Yeah, yeah, I forget what those were called. Uh,
Yeah, they had a really simple name. Is or something. I'm not gonna
yeah.
turn to the next page because I don't wanna reveal what happens at the end of it for people to pick it up. But that's
Um,
a great page, man. That
yeah,
one's
that's the
right in my
page
wheelhouse.
where people are like, "What age is this appropriate for?" And I'm like, that that page is the one where I'm like, "I'm not sure," and especially because
Yeah.
it's a cliffhanger page, so
Mhm.
I'm like, "Yeah, it
Yeah.
might be a
So you don't
it
really
might
know.
not
I'm
be a
sure
good
you're gonna
month." Like, I feel like
be
in the
salty.
trade, I would be like, "Oh, yeah, this is fine,"
Sure.
but, like, for it to end that way, it's a little rough. Uh,
Well, man, I can't wait to see where I can't wait to see where that goes. I mean, I
yeah,
got a feeling, but
yeah,
man,
uh,
you're firing on all cylinders yet again, my friend. Like this is
yeah,
just
yeah.
beautiful work.
Thanks, thanks.
Um,
Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
and it's great working with like Pornsak. It's great working with Jeff, the letterer. Um, you know, Pornsak brings such like disciplined writing, which I feel like
Mhm.
I on my own am very much not a disciplined writer, and so like,
Mhm.
there's this structure that sort of allows for this kind of like the play that I'm doing not and it's like the he keeps it chugging forward. And like Jeff, I haven't seen like I've finished all the art for all the issues, but like
Sure.
the lettering's still going on and stuff. And but I've seen some of the samples, and I'm like, and he's really like really pushing some ideas. So I'm really looking forward to seeing like
Oh man,
his lettering come in and stuff. It's been a great project.
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see the rest. Thanks for
Yeah.
sitting through and walking through this. I mean, I know when I do things like this, sometimes it can be painful to revisit things that you just worked on, like, oh, but no,
Yeah.
man, this is this is it's just fascinating to see how people sort of think about this stuff. And this is what I live for, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
There's no book for this. There's just doing it,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's
everybody's different. It's all subjective. So I like hearing people's
yeah.
thought processes. So
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, it's there's, like, books, but they'll just give you sort of the basics, and, like,
yeah,
I sort of I think I was, like, quite old before I realized I didn't like school, like, like, the sort of, like, classical idea of studying, and that,
yeah,
you know, for me, I had to spend years, like, doing it in a way that didn't really work. You know, like, when I talk about, like, the pens I use and stuff, there's, like, a long time, it's like, "Yep, I used a bottle of ink and a regular, you know, watercolor brush, I used nibs, I used all that stuff," and it's like, I had to, like, work through that to get to, like, the tool that I felt I could express myself the best in, and
yeah.
no book can tell that for you, like, you
No,
just have to do it on your
it's
own.
yeah. It's everybody's got a different journey to get to where they're going because everybody's looking for something different too. In
Yeah.
their in what they
Yeah,
do.
you know, yeah, and so, like, yeah, peop some people will respond to this, some people won't. You know, it's the way
Fools.
idiosyncrasies work. Um,
Yes, that's true. Well, man, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think
thank you.
that other people will appreciate hearing you take the walk through it too. And then so they could find you on Instagram. It's at jesse.lonergan.
Yeah,
Your website is
jesselonergan.com,
jesselonergan.com. They can find
patreon.com/Jesse
you, all those Patreon,
Lonergan,
blah, blah,
everything's
blah. Just
Jesse Lonergan.
all right.
And I think
I'll put it
for the
all down
time
in the show
being,
notes
I
then.
think I'm probably the first one that comes up.
Yeah, I would
Maybe
imagine
there'll be a new
so.
Jesse Lonergan on the horizon, that'll change all that, but for this moment, at
You're the only one that counts, man.
least.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate
Well,
it.
thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye. Join my Patreon to see my work before anyone else. Plus, score physical sketchbooks, mini comics, and commissions delivered right to your door. And reading my new books, Something Seems Off and Three-Headed Pigman, as they are made. Go to my website to order original art, commissions, and my books, Lost Angels, Spectral: A Showcase of Fear, Chaotic Neutral, and more. Gray Matter Drip, The Art of Chris Anderson is available now from Cosmic Lion Productions. Here are the upcoming conventions I'll be at the time of this recording. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. It helps spread the word. Thanks.